a game changer.
Wow, his game literally leaves me speechless.
This guy is going to be one of the best players in college football in a few years.
Every time he touches the ball, you get the sense something special is about to happen.
Imagine a high school football player on top of the world. He's a 5-star recruit with over 70 scholarship offers and the nation's top schools fighting for him. As a junior, he was the #1 recruit in the nation. Every door was open, every opportunity was his. The future? Limitless. But then, without warning, everything crumbled. Those offers, gone. The attention vanished. It's a nightmare he never saw coming as he watched other players make their dreams come true while he was left empty-handed. But now the clock is ticking as he is faced with a harsh reality. Give up football forever or start from the bottom and walk on to a program. So how did this elite player lose over 70 offers his senior year? And why was he no longer the #1 recruit? The stakes are higher than ever, and every move he makes from here on out will not only define his football career, but his life. Welcome to the inspiring story of Micah Cook and the rise, fall, and rise again of the #1 recruit in the nation. This is his road to glory. Micah Cook, or Chef as his teammates called him, is a 5-star junior running back from Tampa, Florida, and he's the #1 recruit in the nation, which is unheard of in a pass-happy league. In fact, the last time a running back was the #1 recruit was 10 years ago when Leonard Fournette was dominating in 2014. But how did Micah get here? Micah's parents signed him up for football when he was 8 years old because he was more athletic than the other kids. But the problem was that his dad took the game more seriously than Micah, while his mom just enjoyed watching him play. His dad knew that with the right mindset and training, Micah could one day develop into one of the best players in the country. But his careless mindset will continue for years until he was a bench-riding freshman. You see, Micah's dad wanted him to get serious about the game, so he did what most dads would do in his situation. That summer, he became a coach on Micah's high school football team. He took Micah to the park for extra practices and even attempted to send him to a few football camps, but Micah showed little interest. However, Micah's dad decided to attempt one final thing: take Micah to one of the biggest rivalry games in college football, Florida versus Florida State. This late Hail Mary would be the turning point for Micah because he was mesmerized by the environment. Deafening crowd noise, electric playmakers, it was all there, and Micah realized what he would miss out on if he didn't get serious. Micah spent more time learning jokes than practicing football his freshman year, but things were different the next year, much different. There was a fire lit inside of him, so he started training seriously with his dad, going to the park on his own, and even watching film on his favorite running backs. This newfound hard work would immediately pay off as Micah would go on to win the starting running back job during fall camp, which was only the start of something extraordinary. Even though his sophomore season was cut short after a heartbreaking playoff loss, it was a breakout year as Micah gained over 3,100 all-purpose yards and scored 23 touchdowns in just 10 games. His speed, agility, and vision made him nearly impossible to stop, and it was this season alone that earned him 4 stars from recruiting experts and offers from some of the best programs in the nation. However, 4 stars, a few offers, and a playoff loss wasn't enough for Micah. He wanted to be the best, and he was determined to come back even stronger next season. Midway through his monster junior year, Micah earned himself a 5-star rating and was the unquestioned #1 recruit in the country. He received endless texts, DMs, mail, and phone calls every day from people hoping to sway him toward their schools. As the offers rolled in, Micah would often imagine himself in uniform for some of the best programs in the country. He saw himself hitting the Heisman polls at the Horseshoe, streaking down the sideline in Tuscaloosa, pointing at his parents as the deafening war chant echoes at Florida State, and even touching the Gatorhead before meeting 90,000 strong. He thought of all the endless jersey options at Oregon, playing a night game at LSU, and running through the T at Tennessee. The possibilities felt endless, but Micah knew that there could only be one school, so he settled on official visits to Tennessee, Alabama, Clemson, Florida, Georgia, and Florida State. During his visits, Micah and his parents were able to step inside multi-million-dollar facilities, learn more about program traditions, and really grasp the culture of each program. He also had the opportunity to meet with coaches, players, and academic advisors to get a sense of how he would fit in both on and off the field. He used all of this information to create a spreadsheet which helped him eventually find his dream school. Despite his constant attention from the world, Micah balanced recruiting and his performance well. He helped his team win their first state championship and made his highly anticipated commitment after the game. It was breaking news across sports platforms as the #1 recruit in the country just committed to the Alabama Crimson Tide. They had it all to Micah: top-tier facilities, a passionate fan base, an explosive offense, a history of producing NFL talent, and prestigious academic programs for his mother. As he proudly donned his Bama hat and celebrated with his family, Micah knew that he made the right decision. Since it was the last game of the season, Micah decided to ride home with his parents instead of taking the team bus. As they drove down a dark Florida highway, Micah and his parents couldn't stop talking about the incredible state game and how proud they were of his performance. They reminisced about Micah's journey to becoming the #1 recruit in the country and how far he had come since he first started playing football as a young boy. His mom was moved to tears as she began talking about his Alabama commitment when her words were suddenly cut short by the unthinkable.
Breaking news tonight, a devastating car accident has left high school football star Micah Cook with severe injuries and tragically claimed the life of his father. We now go live to our reporter at the scene for more details.
A battered and sore Micah woke up 2 days after the accident in the hospital, unaware of what had happened. His mother never left his side while he was unconscious and explained how a drunk driver ran a red light and T-boned their car going 90 miles per hour. Micah and his dad felt most of the impact as they were sitting on the driver's side, while Micah's mom walked away with only a few bumps and bruises. Bumps and bruises were the least of his worries, as Micah had a shattered leg that would keep him out of his entire senior year with multiple surgeries and months of rehab, and doctors weren't sure if he would ever play again. The thought of losing his football career, the one thing he had worked so hard for recently, was devastating. But a deeper pain was near. Micah's teary-eyed mother worked up the courage to tell him that his dad didn't survive the accident, which took all of the life out of Micah. The road to recovery was tough, and Micah struggled to come to terms with not only the loss of his father, but using a cane and brace to walk, and possibly never playing football again. His senior year of high school began with unwavering support from classmates, teammates, and fans in the beginning, but slowly faded away as people moved on with their lives. His status as the #1 recruit in the nation was stripped away as he sat on the end of the bench each week supporting his team. The grueling season came to a close, and Micah was shocked when the University of Alabama rescinded their offer. Damaged goods, a staff member stated, which caused a mass exodus of other teams also rescinding their offers, therefore leaving Micah with 0 scholarships by the time he graduated. By now, it had been over a year since Micah played football, and he no longer required a cane, but still needed a brace to walk. He accepted that his glory days were likely over, but something unexpected happened. Micah received a phone call from a local high school coach who just moved up the ranks into college. He told Micah a story of how he torched his team for 4 touchdowns his junior year and that he still believed in his abilities despite the severe accident. He couldn't offer Micah a scholarship, but he did offer him a chance to try out as a walk-on. There was suddenly a light at the end of this dark tunnel, but Micah questioned himself. At 5'10", 190 pounds, scouts had high expectations for him and called him a day 1 starter, future Heisman winner, and one scout even called him Reggie Bush 2.0. But who is he now? How would he do this without his dad? Is he really damaged goods? The questions never stopped, but Micah thought back to the first time he attended a big game with his dad and visualized himself on the field again. He still wanted to be elite at the next level, and the thought of his parents watching him play pushed him to accept the challenge. His dad was dead. He missed his entire senior season, he wore a leg brace, and he lost most of his confidence. However, one thing was clear. Micah Cook was going to try out for the FIU Panthers in Miami next season. Micah knew that in order to make the FIU roster, he would have to put in extra effort and hard work before arriving to fall camp. He spent countless hours in the gym and on the field strengthening his body, which caused him to suffer a few setbacks. However, he refused to let up as he was determined to make the most of this opportunity and prove to himself that he still belonged on the field. Coach Terry, the coach that gave Micah a chance, was promoted to offensive coordinator for FIU after they had one of the worst offenses in the conference last year. He believed strongly that Micah could potentially be both of their meal tickets to a big-time program if he made the team and eventually worked his way back to a 5-star talent. This motivated Micah even more, knowing that he had someone other than his mom who believed in him and his abilities. Micah showed up to fall camp a lot stronger and confident, even though he was still wearing his leg brace. He impressed everyone with his determination, hard work, and even flashed glimpses of his old 5-star talent. He still lacked his natural top-end speed, but coaches loved his vision and ability to make defenders miss easily. As fall camp came to a close, the official Week 1 depth chart was revealed, and Micah was excited to find out that he not only made the team as a walk-on, but he will be backing up starter Keyshawn Owens. However, his excitement was short-lived when he received an unexpected text from Keyshawn welcoming him to the team, but also telling Micah don't expect to take his job. You see, even though Micah was a new kid on campus, his teammates, especially Keyshawn, knew exactly who he was thanks to Google. Micah sat on the text for a while, but decided to meet fire with fire and told Keyshawn, "You might be the main guy for now, but I've arrived and I don't plan to be a backup for long." Fall camp ended, school officially started, and things quickly transitioned into game week against a tough Indiana team on the road, and Micah had 4 season goals in mind. Earn the starting running back position, rush for 1,000 yards, eventually play without his leg brace, and help FIU win the Conference USA, which was a long shot. He did some research on FIU during fall camp and found out that they haven't had a winning season since 2018, and they haven't won a conference championship since 2010. Their home games would be virtually empty as students and alumni had no reason to be excited about FIU football. They were a losing program with losing ways, and people felt this season was no different. However, Micah wanted to change all of this whether he was at FIU for 1 year or 4. As the Panthers boarded their plane to Indiana, Micah couldn't help but feel a sense of determination and excitement. He didn't know if or how much he would play, but he was ready to prove himself and make an impact on the field. It was almost kickoff for the first game of the season, and the Panthers' losing ways immediately took effect as they watched the Hoosiers run past Hep's Rock in awe. Micah could sense doubt, fear, and a lack of confidence as some of his teammates have never been on this type of stage before, and thus, this mindset caused his team to be down 14 early. Indiana wasn't a powerhouse in the college football world, but in comparison to FIU, they were basically Alabama. Things were about to get ugly if Coach Terry didn't figure out a way to help his offense. He called Micah's number late in the first quarter hoping for a spark. Even though he was practicing consistently, it still had been over a year since Micah played in a real game. He had been through so much pain losing his father and fighting his way back onto a roster after losing every scholarship due to his shattered leg. His leg brace reminded him of this every day, but his moment was finally here as he waited anxiously for his first play call in the huddle. Gun Trey Wright counter was the call, and Micah couldn't help but feel nervous as they broke the huddle. Micah's heart felt like it was going to burst through his chest as both teams lined up and things went silent. He was looking around, but couldn't hear anything other than his heartbeat and his quarterback's cadence. And then the ball was snapped.
Out of the shotgun, they go to the ground. At the 40, there he goes. Running toward the tape. Touchdown.
The stadium went silent as Micah blew past defenders for a 51-yard touchdown on his first collegiate carry. Micah was frozen in the end zone and overwhelmed with emotions as he stared into the crowd. He always dreamt of one day scoring another touchdown, but to do it in a leg brace on his very first play in a hostile stadium was something only seen in movies. But Micah knew one thing for sure. He was back, and he let the world, or at least the people in Indiana, know it when he snapped out of his frozen state and celebrated his first collegiate touchdown. Micah's touchdown appeared to provide the spark that Coach Terry wanted, as the offense would go on to score another touchdown, but the Panthers were still down 10 late in the third quarter. Coach Terry didn't plan on playing Micah much because he knew he was only about 75%, but he wanted to see if lightning could strike twice by calling Micah's number again on a key 3rd and 5. Micah got the first down with ease, but he thanked his tight end for the key block that caused him not to get blown up in the backfield. Micah's first down eventually led to a touchdown for FIU, and surprisingly, they were only down 3 going into the fourth quarter. The defense forced a punt early, and rather than wait for something bad to happen, Coach Terry decided to capitalize on the momentum switch. He put Micah into the game on first down and changed the original run play that was supposed to go to starting running back Keyshawn. He didn't like that. At all. Keyjon decided not to lead block for Micah, but it didn't matter because Micah rounded the edge with speed and broke for another 28-yard run, putting the offense in place to potentially take the lead. As Micah ran back to the sideline, a few Indiana fans were upset and trying to figure out exactly who number 5 was. But their excitement returned as FIU was not able to capitalize on the big play and turned the ball over on 4th down. Micah wouldn't see the field again, but the Panthers still had a chance to tie the game on their final drive until the kicker missed the field goal with 1 minute left. Keyjon was clearly the man right now because he had 27 carries for 143 yards and a touchdown, but his first quarter fumble is what led to Micah getting some early playing time, and he capitalized on it with an impressive 88 yards and 1 touchdown on only 3 carries. There was a time when Micah thought he would never play football again, but now here he was, making plays for his new team with more opportunities coming his way as the Panthers faced off against Central Michigan for their first home game in Week 2. After accepting his NIL deal, Micah spent most of the week training and meeting with Coach Terry after practice to review film. He knew he had a real chance to become a starter before the season was over, but for now, he was still running back number 2 as Central Michigan flew into town for FIU's home opener. Even though he expected a low fan turnout, Micah felt like the atmosphere was severely underwhelming. He knew this wouldn't be the Alabama crowd that he once dreamed about, but to him, it felt more like a mid-season high school game. Micah quickly had to refocus as once again the starting offense came out flat and they found themselves down 12-0 after the first quarter. Coach Terry let Micah know during film study that he would get more sweeps called because he knew that Micah could beat Central Michigan with speed to the outside. And so, to open up the second quarter, Micah got his first sweep called and beat the defenders with speed just like Coach said he would. Micah wasn't much of a trash talker, but after stiff-arming a defender on their sidelines and being pushed, he let them know that he would be terrorizing them all night. Micah's post-play antics seemed to fire everyone up because the offense would go on to finally score their first touchdown of the game. However, after the first touchdown, Micah watched the offense struggle for most of the first half, and they would enter the third quarter down 21-14 when his second sweep play was called for him. Micah really felt like starting running back Keyjon was out to sabotage not only him, but the entire offense. He purposely missed another key block, but Micah was so shifty that he made the defender miss before ending his spectacular run with a dive in the end zone to get his second touchdown of the season and tie the game at 21. Micah spent the rest of the third quarter on the sideline treadmill after he felt a bit of stiffness in his leg. He really wanted to remove his leg brace, but the trainers wouldn't let him just yet. He was cleared to play and entered back into the game early in the fourth quarter for what's becoming his signature sweep play. It almost felt too easy for Micah as he was gashing the defense like they were a little league team, but as he got up and ran to the sideline, he felt a sharp pain in his leg. He made the costly mistake of not telling the training staff about the pain, but more on this decision later. After Micah's game-tying touchdown early in the third quarter, both defenses really put on a show and kept the offenses scoreless until FIU finally made a field goal. With under 2 minutes left and the ball in the red zone, Micah got the call once again to seal the victory and lead FIU to their first win of the season. But Central Michigan had other plans. Their defensive coordinator finally figured out the play call and shaded both linebackers to the weak side in order to stop Micah. Even though Micah didn't score, Central Michigan was forced to use all of their timeouts and the FIU offense kicked a field goal to go up 6 with less than a minute left. Players were laughing and beginning to celebrate. Fans were starting to leave the stadium, and the game appeared to be won. Then, something jaw-dropping happened. Central Michigan scored their only touchdown of the second half on a Hail Mary to beat the Panthers by 1 point, 28-27. Was this loser's luck because FIU had been a losing program for years? In a matter of seconds, their record went from potential 1-1 to 0-2 as they dropped their first away and home game. The entire stadium, including Micah, was stunned. But the only thing to do was look forward to next week when the Panthers take on their in-state South Florida rival, FAU. Micah never heard of the Shula Bowl, but everyone's increased energy rubbed off on him and he found himself training much harder in preparation for the big game. But this would be a mistake as Micah was beginning to put too much strain on his leg. The extra training sessions led to bad practices, and he felt like he could re-injure himself if he wasn't careful. But as most players do, he said nothing. Before everyone knew it, the Panthers were on the team bus riding across town to take on FAU. Even though the stadium was small and somewhat empty, Micah still felt the energy in the air, and he could tell that this game really mattered. However, Once again, the offense continued to leave their effort in the locker room as they were down 10 at the end of the first quarter before finally scoring a touchdown in the early second. After the defense forced a turnover, Coach Terry called a halfback slam in which Micah would have to lead block for starter Keyshawn. As Micah left the huddle, he thought back to those moments when it looked like Keyshawn was purposely missing blocks for him, and now he had the chance to return the favor. Micah wasn't like Keyshawn though. His dad taught him to be a team player, so he was willing to do whatever it took to help his team win. He not only led block for Keyshawn, but he got the touchdown breaking block that allowed Keyshawn to go untouched up the middle for 80 yards. It's a shame that Keyshawn didn't care to block for Micah because he had the chance to redeem himself later in the second quarter or Micah's signature sweep play, but instead opted to run right by another defender and Micah lost 4 yards. The O-line was blown up into the backfield, but there was still a chance that Micah could have rounded the edge with Keyshawn's block. It didn't matter though, because a few plays afterwards, Keyshawn scored another long touchdown right before the end of the second half, putting an ecstatic FIU team up 21-10. FIU's halftime excitement would be short-lived though, as FAU quickly scored a touchdown and surprise 2-point conversion to open the third quarter, closing the gap to 3. Even though nobody knew about Micah's leg pain, the game was working out in his favor. He spent most of his time blocking and even showed great effort when he whiffed on a block, but circled back to clean up a defender as Keyshawn ran down the sideline. This led to Keyshawn's third touchdown of the day, and FIU was up 30-18 entering the fourth quarter. Micah only had 1 carry for -4 yards when Coach Terry called his signature sweep play again. Keyshawn missed another block, but this time Micah used his small distraction to sprint around the edge and towards the end zone. He played it off well, but his leg was in pain and he got caught at the 1-yard line. A quarterback sneak from the 1 put FIU up 37-18 and the game felt over. But after last week's last-second Hail Mary loss, nobody on the team was too excited just yet. The score was 40-24 after FAU scored another touchdown with 2 minutes left in the game, and Coach Terry wanted to ensure that the game was over this time. He stayed aggressive with his play calling, and the offense drove all the way down the field before Coach let Micah redeem himself with a 5-yard touchdown run. Just like that, the offense put up a whopping 47 points against their crosstown rivals, and Micah even got to experience his first collegiate victory formation, which his dad always told him was the best play in football. The victory against FAU was a huge morale boost for the FIU football team. Not only did they finally get to experience a taste of victory after a tough loss, but they also proved that they could put big numbers on the scoreboard. Keyshawn was a player of the game with 172 yards and 3 touchdowns, while Micah only had 37 yards and 1 touchdown. But that was the least of his worries. He knew that if he was going to eventually start this season, he would have to resolve the issues that his leg was causing him. After last week's game, there was only a slight pain, but now he felt as if he was on the verge of possibly missing games due to his leg. He had a tough decision to make: tell the trainers about his leg and possibly sit out, or continue playing and hoping things don't get worse. The FIU Panthers knew that a D3 school was coming to Miami this week, and even for a lower tier school like FIU, that meant this could be a big stat game for everyone. Micah took the field against the Astronauts in deep pain once again, but laid it all on the line as he was not only battling against the pain, but against starter Keyshawn and even third-string senior running back Lexington, who was also looking for his big break. Micah would go on to have his best day yet, racking up his first 100-yard rushing game and scoring another touchdown. But third-string running back Lexington stole the show with 185 yards, while starter Keyshawn had an abysmal 24-yard performance. Even though the score was only 21-7, Micah and his teammates felt like they were always in control and were now 2-2 on the season. However, Coach Terry didn't agree. He thought that the offense was flat after scoring 47 points in a blowout win last week. Looking to improve the offense quickly, Coach Terry decided to amp up the competition by announcing position battles. All of Micah's pain and suffering the last few weeks was for this moment. Did he do enough to earn a position battle against Keyshawn? Did third stringer Lexington steal his chance after rushing for almost 200 yards? The offense was wondering who would be losing their job next week and riding the bench. It was a make or break week for Micah as he approached his 5th game of the season against Louisiana Tech. He woke up from a nap and had 2 text messages waiting for him. The first from his academic advisor congratulating him on acing his recent tests, but Micah forgot the text back because he caught a glimpse of his other text message from Trevor, Coach Terry's assistant. He had been anticipating the opportunity to fight for a starting job since the beginning of the season, and things were finally becoming real. Not only was the running back job up for grabs, but so was the receivers and tight ends. It was a chance for someone new to step in and elevate the often flat offense. There could be a potential new face of the program. A star could be born. Micah wanted to be that person for the FIU offense, but he knew that he couldn't continue ignoring the nagging pain in his leg. The injury from the car accident that killed his father had taken its toll on him. He knew he could withstand the pain a bit more, but if he wanted to be 100% and truly lead the offense, he would need to let the training staff know sooner than later. However, that day wasn't here just yet, because Micah arrived at practice later that afternoon with a burning desire to earn the starting job. Somebody was losing their job today. The only question was who? As position battles began, both Micah and Keyshawn were put through 3 drills and they both dominated. Keyshawn was selfish, but he wasn't a bad player. However, the offense just appeared to flow better with Micah, and the stats didn't lie. Keyshawn was the second leading rusher in the conference, but Micah had just as many yards on a third of the carries, and he also averaged twice as many yards per carry. By the end of practice, there were 2 new starting offensive playmakers, wide receiver Eric Rivers and running back Micah Cook. Micah's journey to this moment had been long and filled with challenges, both on and off the field. From losing his father in a car accident to having all of his D1 offers stripped away, he had faced adversity head on and persevered. And now, he had finally earned his spot on the field as a starter while still wearing his leg brace. With his leg in mind, Micah decided to double up on his training to prepare for his first start. The Panthers were 2-2 on the season, and Louisiana Tech was their first conference game, so this was Micah's chance to instantly start leading his team in the right direction. Nobody knew, but he was going to start his first ever collegiate game with a high risk of injury. There was a heavy downpour as the Panthers ran onto the soaked field for a noon kickoff. Most teams are expected to run the ball heavily during rain games, but Coach Terry dialed up 2 straight play-action passes to catch the defense off guard and connected big with new starter Eric for the Panthers' very first opening drive touchdown of the season. Then, to follow it up, Micah delivered an untouched 76-yard lightning strike on his first carry the very next drive. Things already felt different and the Panthers' offense was rolling early. They were up 17-14 in the second quarter when Micah's worst fear finally happened. After receiving multiple carries on the same drive, Micah was slow to get up after a seemingly normal tackle. His shattered leg was technically healed per x-rays, but there was still a sharp pain in his leg at times, so he had no choice but to finally let the trainers know. Even though he already made a big play, he felt like he let himself and the team down, and he even thought he would lose the job he just earned. A crushed Micah watched the game from the sidelines as the trainers worked to relieve some of the pain in his leg. However, the offense was still dominant even without Micah. They put up a season-high 27 first-half points and held a comfortable lead through the third quarter. Micah wanted to play badly, especially since it was his first start, so he downplayed the real pain he was experiencing to the trainers and got back in the game to open the fourth quarter. Running off pure adrenaline, he caught his first pass of the season on a key 3rd and 6, but took a bad hit at the end and then fell on his leg awkwardly the very next play. He did not want to leave the game again due to another injury, but it was hard to protect his entire leg from hits and falls. Coach Terry called Micah's signature sweep play, and Micah planned to run outside and eventually go out of bounds to avoid any hits, but Louisiana Tech's defensive end had other plans. As he was heading outside, the defensive end taunts the tight end to the side like a rag doll, forcing Micah to cut up. But his true 5-star talent was on full display as he burst through a hole and juked out the safety before taking off towards the end zone. The adrenaline rush Micah felt made the pain non-existent, and it was the first time he showed off his real speed all season, easily pulling away from the defense. It wasn't his longest, but it was definitely the best run of his career so far. Up 37-14 in the fourth, the game felt out of reach, but Louisiana Tech would eventually score twice to cut the lead to 43-27. They were out of timeouts, so Coach Terry called on Micah one final time to close out the game with 2 minutes left. His adrenaline wore off after sitting on the sidelines most of the fourth quarter, but Micah had enough energy in the tank to perform not 1, but 2 spin cycles on defenders to seal the victory and put FIU up 3-2 on the season. It was an electric performance from Micah, who won Player of the Game honors with 185 yards and 2 touchdowns on only 8 carries. But Micah felt like he would have done so much more if his leg didn't sideline him. Nevertheless, things were finally looking up for an offense that was struggling all season. It had came at the perfect time because after their bye week, the Panthers go on the road to face the #1 team in the conference, the Liberty Flames. Liberty wasn't just the #1 team in the conference, they also had the #1 passer and rusher. They won the conference last year with an undefeated record, and they stomped FIU 38-6 in Miami last season. Micah didn't appreciate people already writing his team off, so he doubled down on his training and recovery to make sure he was ready, and when game day arrived, he ran out of the visiting team tunnel feeling the best he has ever felt before. Despite that, problems arose quickly as the Panthers were down 10 as the first quarter ended, and Micah found himself scrapping for every single yard. To open the second quarter, he was finally able to get a good 7-yard gain before Coach Terry decided to take the top off with Eric for a touchdown. Even though Micah and Eric just earned their starting jobs, it was beginning to feel like a three-headed monster was forming with them and quarterback Keon. Micah and the Panthers offense would continue to scrap for yards throughout the second quarter until he made his first big play after cutting back on an inside zone. He was quietly creeping up on 100 yards rushing before the end of the first half, but Liberty's defense was stifling and kept FIU out of the end zone, so the game was still tied 10-10 with 2 minutes left. Coach Terry wanted to score before the half to gain some momentum, so he called all goals and Keon delivered a beautiful dot to a receiver for 53 yards, and then he followed it up with a swing pass to Micah that put the Panthers on the 6-yard line. This is exactly what they needed, as they scored on the next play and took the lead, but the Flames had an answer. After a 50-yard kick return, they scored quickly, and the Panthers offense found themselves with the ball again with only 22 seconds left and 2 timeouts. In spite of this, both defenses checked out early and went to the locker room because Keon threw up a prayer that should have been picked off, but Eric made a spectacular play and the offense would go on to take the lead into halftime 24-17. But that's where the Panthers' luck seemingly ran out, as the third quarter was a back and forth punt fest. Even when it seemed like the offense would finally come away with points, the Liberty defense came up with a big stop on 4th and inches as Micah attempted to take a toss around the edge. It was a questionable play call, since they only needed an inch, but Coach Terry was hoping to surprise the defense. Only a field goal was scored in the third quarter by Liberty, but the Panthers were still up 4 heading into the fourth quarter. Coach Terry wanted to go deep on the first play of the fourth quarter, but Micah missed a block that caused Keon to get sacked. The very next play, Micah redeemed himself and picked up his block, but another came through and Keon was sacked once again. The momentum had shifted and the crowd was going nuts as the Panthers offense took back-to-back sacks that killed the drive and left them with a 3rd and 24 from their own 3-yard line. After punting on 4th down, Liberty took full advantage of the poor field positioning, running almost 4 minutes off the clock and scoring on their next drive, taking the lead. With 2 minutes left and down 3, it was up to Micah and the offense to bring home the W. A win against the defending conference champs would elevate the trajectory of their season and solidify their place as real contenders within the conference. After throwing incomplete in a 5-wide set, Micah entered the game and caught a swing pass for a few yards. He was one person away from making a big play, but the defender made a great open field tackle and held Micah to a gain of 4 instead of 40. After another 5-wide set incompletion, the offense was staring at a 4th and 6 in front of a raucous crowd. The defense was struggling to stop Liberty's offense, so even though they had 3 timeouts left, the game was likely over if they didn't get a first down. The play call was all goals, with Micah being used as a check down. It was the perfect play call that allowed him to find an open spot underneath the zone defense. But Micah didn't do a great job at reading the coverage. Instead of finding open grass to sit in, Micah drifted upfield and Keon led him too far and he was leveled by the linebacker. The crowd erupted as the big hit jarred the ball loose and the offense turned the ball over. The defense couldn't get a stop, and as Micah watched the clock eventually strike 0, he couldn't help but feel terrible that he lost his team the game. His teammates and coaches let him know that it was a team effort, and not only his fault, but to Micah, that was unacceptable. He made that routine catch a million times in practice, but when it mattered most, he failed. Micah was struggling with his 4th down blunder and allowed his mistake to really eat him up inside. They should have been 4-2, but in the blink of an eye, the Panthers were sitting at an even 3-3 record again. The game was over, but Micah couldn't get his mistake out of his head and failed his midterms a few days later. His downhill destruction continued the following game when the Panthers were steamrolled by the UTEP Miners 28-9. Micah even dropped 2 garbage time touchdown passes that wouldn't have helped them win, but it could have boosted his plummeting morale. The Panthers were now 3-4 and the losing mentality started to sink back in for some players. But for Micah, he was left with the decision: join his teammates and continue to wallow in self-pity, or use these failures as motivation to come back stronger. Coming off back-to-back losses on the road, the Panthers returned home for a Week 9 matchup against Sam Houston. The season was far from over, but Micah realized that the toxicity from being a losing program was infecting the team even more. Two of his teammates skipped a geometry class that they took together. Another teammate announced that he would transfer and sit out the rest of the year. And two more even made the big mistake of showing up to practice late. Micah didn't want the cancer to settle in more and ruin the rest of the season, so he took it upon himself to be the gem his team needed. But first, he needed to get over his big mistake and recreate himself. He started by pleading with the training staff to remove his leg brace since his leg was feeling much better. After a bit of back and forth, they eventually agreed to let Micah test his leg during practice without a brace, and if everything checked out, he would be clear. Micah's confidence exploded now that he knew he wouldn't need his leg brace anymore, but he still decided to wear leg sleeves for extra support. He continued to recreate himself by upgrading his gloves, cleats, and even rolled his jersey up for a bit more swag. His new look and resurgence in confidence helped him dominate practice and lead the offense all week. Micah was ready to unleash a new version of himself on the field, and he started by leading his team out of the tunnel for the first time against 4-3 Sam Houston. He simply wanted his teammates to feed off of his energy, and his plan worked. The Panthers got the ball first and drove down the field with ease, led by Micah. He was so much quicker and confident and had 55 yards and a touchdown on just 3 carries. But things didn't stop there. Micah had over 100 rushing yards in the first half, and his energy revitalized FIU's three-headed monster. He watched as Keon and Eric connected for 2 long bombs on back-to-back drives that put the Panthers up 31-10 at the half. Things still didn't stop there. After Sam Houston had the ball for over 5 minutes in the third quarter before a turnover, Micah would break another long run for his second touchdown of the day. He saluted the band and student section to show his appreciation for showing up to the game, even though it was raining and they dropped their last 2 games. The reign of terror was complete as the starters sat out for the entire fourth quarter, and Micah earned Player of the Game honors with a career-high 189 yards. His energy was perfect, and the Panthers moved to 4-4 with a 41-13 win. Micah knew that he would need to continue being the leader that showed up today if his team was going to have any chance of finishing with a winning record and possibly sneaking into a conference championship. He kept his same philosophy the next week and led his team onto the field again for a night game against winless New Mexico State. There were no upsets here as Micah and the Panthers dominated the Aggies 48-24, and Micah crossed another season goal off his list when he eclipsed 1,000 yards rushing for the first time in his career. Joined by Eric and Keon, the three-headed monster was in full effect as the Panthers' offense was virtually unstoppable. If Micah didn't score, then Eric or Keon did. It was simple, yet very effective, and the domination continued on the road against Jacksonville State and Kennesaw State. Nobody could stop the Panthers' offense, and the defense was playing lights out. A seemingly disastrous season had a miracle turnaround as the Panthers were now on a 4-game winning streak behind Micah's leadership and sitting on a 7-4 record. But more importantly, they were 5-2 in the conference and needed to close out the season with a win against Middle Tennessee State in order to earn a bid in the conference championship game. However, if they lost, Middle Tennessee State would take their place in the conference championship. It was truly a win or go home scenario, and it all came down to this. The team had been through a roller coaster of a season, with highs and lows that tested their resilience and determination. But here they were, facing the final game of the regular season with everything on the line. Nobody expected them to be here. Nobody. But for running back Micah and his teammates, a little faith can go a long way. Rewind to the beginning of the season, where coaches and players alike were unsure of what was to come. After all, this was a losing program that was struggling for years. They were projected to finish last place in the conference, the fans stopped coming to the games, and the local media didn't even bother to cover the team. It was a dark place to be in. However, with key additions such as Coach Terry and the three-headed monster elevating the offense, there was finally a light at the end of the tunnel. A chance to finally be a winner. It was finally game day and the stakes were at an all-time high. You could feel the anticipation in the air as the Panthers arrived at Pitbull Stadium and took in all the pre-game festivities. Micah couldn't help but feel proud of his team during warm-ups, but more importantly, he was proud of himself. He had overcome so many obstacles, including the loss of his father, just to get back on the field, and now he was leading his team onto the field in front of a larger crowd of screaming fans with a chance to do something legendary for the program. Middle Tennessee State quickly struck first, and it was clear that they planned on ruining the Panthers' conference championship hopes when Micah got punched in the mouth on his very first carry of the game. Coach Terry knew that Middle Tennessee State would focus heavily on Micah, so he added RPOs to this week's game plan. Micah was being stonewalled in the run game early, but he managed to catch a wheel route out of the backfield and was one man away from scoring their first touchdown of the game. The offense eventually stalled, but Coach Terry knew that his RPO scheme with Micah would eventually come up big down the stretch. After the defense forced a punt, Coach Terry went back to the RPO game and the Panthers walked down the field. 8 yards, 9 yards, 6 yards. Touchdown Micah. The offense was heating up as the game was tied 7-7 going into the second quarter, but every football game has a defining moment. A moment that everyone looks back to after the game and believes it was the play where things took a turn, either for the best or the worst. Well, that play came early in the second quarter when Middle Tennessee State sent an all-out blitz and Keon had to throw it hot to Micah. If Micah catches the ball, he likely scores a touchdown and puts all the momentum in his team's favor. But instead, the safety stole the momentum with an early touchdown-saving diving interception. He got up and taunted the crowd as Keon couldn't believe what just happened. The defense stopped the Blue Raiders to a field goal, but things got worse the very next drive when Micah broke for a 40-yard run, but had to leave the game after landing on the football and getting the wind knocked out of him. He provided just enough of a spark to propel the offense into the end zone and take the lead. Unfortunately, this lead wouldn't last long, as Keon would throw another interception, this time for a pick six to end the half down 24-21. Micah was cleared to play in the second half, so Coach Terry went back to the RPO scheme. Lanes were opening up for Micah, as the defense was forced to key on other players and he eclipsed 100 yards rushing. The plan was working as the Panthers drove down the field before Micah capped it off with an easy walk-in touchdown to retake the lead 28-24. So on the Panthers' next offensive drive to possibly go up 2 touchdowns, Keon threw his third interception of the game. Thankfully, the defense came up big and only allowed 3 points. Up 28-27 towards the end of the third quarter, Coach Terry could tell that Keon was losing confidence, so he tried to put the ball in Micah's hands. There were a few good plays from Micah here and there, but with the offense being one-dimensional, things eventually stalled out. However, the defense was holding strong as they didn't allow any points and the game remained 28-27 with 6 minutes left, and the Panthers had the ball on a 2nd and 13 after a failed jet sweep. With the Blue Raiders stacking the box, Coach Terry called the same play-action pass that Keon threw a pick on earlier in the game. The goal was to catch the defender sleeping and throw it over the top for an easy bomb. It felt like the perfect play call. The box was stacked and Keon felt like they were blitzing, so he changed the play and alerted Micah to do a swing as a hot read. But he read the defense wrong and Micah watched the ball leave his hands and go right into the DB's hands for a devastating fourth quarter turnover. Micah quickly shifted from receiver to defender as he worked to get off of a block. He was able to turn the DB back inside towards his teammates, but nobody was home. It was another pick six and interception number 4 for Keon as the Blue Raiders went up 33-28 and sucked the life out of Pit Bull Stadium. Micah had 19 carries for 145 yards and a touchdown, but it wasn't enough to overcome the poor play of his quarterback Keon. The offense never got anything going again, and Micah watched as the Blue Raiders offense held the ball for the rest of the game. Just like that, the chance at a conference championship was gone. The stadium was stunned. Everyone was silent. The Panthers finished the regular season 7-5 and were bowl eligible for the first time in a long time. But the season felt like a miss without a conference championship and a chance at a potential playoff run. After the Panthers lost the big game at home, the end of the season felt like a blur. As bowl games were announced, the Panthers would earn a bid to the RL Carriers New Orleans Bowl against 6-6 James Madison for their final game of the season. Micah carried the team with 135 yards and 1 touchdown, but they fell 20-16 and officially finished the season 7-6. Technically a winning season, but still considered terrible by most football fanatics. The world found out that Jalen Milroe won the Heisman at Alabama, and Micah couldn't help but imagine what could have been if he signed with them before his severe accident. He had gained so much confidence this season, and it skyrocketed even more when he took home a plethora of accolades. First team All-Conference, Freshman All-Conference, Freshman All-American, Second team All-American. These awards highlighted a monster year for Micah as he beat out Michigan's Donovan Edwards as the nation's leading rusher by only 3 yards. Michigan repeated as national championships, beating Virginia Tech 31-13, and they were one of the bigger programs eyeing Micah. They wanted him to be the successor to Donovan Edwards, but they weren't alone. Ohio State, Tennessee, Florida State, LSU. The offers felt endless, and Micah knew he had to make another big decision for himself. Does he move up the ranks and play college football in a major conference, such as the SEC or Big Ten? Or does he return to FIU and finish the business that they started this year? Does he leave Coach Cherry after 1 year, the only coach that gave him a chance to play football again? What about the NIL deals? Programs were throwing life-changing money at Micah, some offering up to $1 million to transfer. So many questions, so little time. What will Micah do for his sophomore season?